If you receive an SBA PPP-2 loan and it was denied for forgiveness, pay attention. We have some great tips in this video that will help you out. Some of the other issues that we've seen are discrepancies in the payroll records, and I know this seems very unlikely, but we're running across a lot of those right now, and it could be actually a common issue. So if you have employees and you issue them W-2s, and for some reason you found there was an error, now you're going to amend your W-2s, and you don't amend your payroll tax return, well, now your payroll tax return, basically the total that's listed on there for gross wages does not match the total for the W-2s, and we've seen that happen as well. Or the other side, maybe you might have an amended quarterly payroll return, and that amount doesn't get adjusted on your income tax return. The ERC credit is another issue that's going on right now. Companies that are applying for the ERC credit, you're not allowed to include in the ERC the amount of the payroll that was funded by the PPP loan. And it's a very complicated, a lot of details in that process. Make sure you hire somebody who's qualified with the ERC. IRS has indicated that that's one of their top priorities, and they consider it to be, in a sense, a tax shelter in some instances, because a lot of companies, a lot of non-CPAs and non-professionals were helping businesses apply for those ERC credits, amend their payroll tax return, get back quite a bit of money, I mean hundreds of thousands, if not maybe $500,000 in some cases. And now IRS is potentially could be auditing those companies. They've already made it publicly recognized that they are going to be targeting that potentially in 2023. So just be careful, make sure the numbers match up. Make sure your PPP, your payroll is consistent amongst all of your documents. So you're going to have your income tax returns, which report your wages, and if you have a corporation, it's also the officer compensation included with that. You might have some wages that are stuck into the cost of goods sold, depending upon the type of company you have. So just look at the total wages, make sure that that matches your W-2s and your W-3. Your W-3 is the cover sheet for all your W-2s. It gets filed with IRS, and it's the summary of the gross wages of all the W-2s. So make sure those numbers are matching. And then thirdly, you have your payroll journals, and make sure the journals are consistent so that they're all those tie in together. And so we've seen numerous letters come out very recently within the last 6 months where SBA has denied forgiveness because they are identifying an inconsistency in the records, basically a discrepancy that they cannot be reconciled. And so you just want to make sure, if you do have a discrepancy, really identify why the discrepancy exists and be able to explain that to SBA. Hopefully, it's not something that would lead to a denial of the forgiveness, but in any event, just dig into that and make sure you have a professional helping you. The last thing I want to point out, what we've noticed, a lot of borrowers, businesses that are coming and asking us questions and asking us to represent them to file the appeal, a lot of them are not understanding what the calculation is. There are two separate calculations when we're dealing with the PPP loan, whether it's number 1 or number 2. The first calculation is SBA, when you're going to be filing your appeal, SBA wants to know, did the company get the correct loan amount? So that's based upon the calculation I mentioned earlier in this video, where you have to calculate your total wages less the excess comp over 100 plus your employee benefits, plus in another part of that, you're also going to get a very small portion for the state unemployment insurance, which is really usually a small number. All those added together. But, and then you're going to divide it and get the average and multiply by 2.5 or 3.5. That is a separate calculation for how you spent the money. So a lot of people thinking, well, I got the money and I spent it entirely on wages and then I can establish that. That doesn't matter. They're going back now and they say, okay, when you applied for the loan initially, did we give you the correct amount? Can you recreate the amount that you asked for in your original loan, whether it's PPP-1 or PPP-2? Now, if you're on PPP-2 and you got a denial of forgiveness and you're going to be applying for forgiveness, it doesn't matter that they approved your first PPP-1 loan and they gave you forgiveness. They can go back and retract it if they find an inconsistency or discrepancy. So be really careful. Make sure that your numbers line up. And if they don't, definitely contact a professional. The only type of individuals who can represent a company before OHA, the Office of Hearing Appeals, where you file your appeal, is either an owner of the company, an officer, or an attorney. And unfortunately, the CPAs they're not allowed to represent companies in this appeal. So make sure you have the right person. Otherwise, the court will kick it, and then they'll give you some time, but they're going to kick it. And so you'll either have to hire an attorney or make sure an owner or an officer is representing the company. I'm John Milikowski, founder of Milikowski Tax Law. I hope this information was valuable. Please call us if you have any questions.